Hello everyone, welcome back, and right now we're just going to go ahead and recap some of the stuff going on with Modern Warfare 2 after the beta. With that said, I do want to say that I don't like to be negative. I'm not one of these guys that want to make content just to be negative. I want to provide feedback, I want to provide my experience and what I think would benefit the game the most. I want to see these games succeed, every single game, I want to see them succeed. The more games we have, the more choices we have to play, and the less we have to sit and just cope with whatever game there's currently out there because there isn't a competitor. So moving forward with that, there was a very small response that Infinity Ward gave off as an initial response to the second week of the beta, stating that they're going to make some changes, some slight changes to the footsteps, maybe not, some changes to third person, and then of course what I actually care about, which are weapon visibility, character visibility, being able to see your enemy down sights, down the range. They are saying that they're making some changes to character visibility that may or may not rely solely on nameplates. And nameplates or name tags are something that have been a part of Call of Duty for forever. We do want to have name tags in order to tell whether or not someone is sitting at a head glitch or someone is laying down prone. We need that kind of response because the gameplay simply isn't clear enough to show us whether or not that's actually a person, whether it's an object, or whether it's a ragdoll of someone else's body from the previous fight. And because of those inconsistencies, it's what made the beta a little difficult to play, especially for me. It's very hard for me to see what I was looking at more times than not when I was trying to fire at someone, and there was a lot of guesswork involved. That said, character visibility isn't the only issue. Weapon visibility, in regards to the visual recoil, does need to be adjusted. It feels way too intense for the kind of recoil that's coming out of the gun. I don't mind the gun having actual recoil, I don't mind having to fight actual recoil. I have no issues with that whatsoever. But I cannot see clearly through the optic in order to counter the recoil that I'm dealing with. And I don't mind the visual recoil having just a little bit more than what say Vanguard recoil is, because Vanguard's recoil, at least on the Warzone side, is almost none. So I don't mind there being some sort of visual recoil to throw people off, but it's way too much right now. It's very difficult for me to shoot at anyone or at anything past 20 meters unless I'm using a marksman rifle. But I am going to stop it there, and if you are more curious about my thoughts on visual recoil, you can watch the previous video where I went a little bit more in depth into that. So again, sadly, that's really the only point that I can address from the little response that they provided, because nothing else actually matters to me. They did say something about there being a little more clarity in regards to the Ricochet Anti-Cheat and what's going to happen there. I just want to make sure that Ricochet Anti-Cheat is going to be working from the launch, and that's going to continue to be updated and continue to fight hackers. Everyone is expecting the Ricochet Anti-Cheat to keep 100% of the hackers out. That will never happen. It's going to happen in waves. 90% of the game is going to be clean with a proper anti-cheat, and then you're always going to have those fringe cases and those fringe players where you can't quite tell, and they may be on an on-season or an off-season, and you just have to see whether or not that lines up with the ban waves or whether or not it lines up with anything else that they're doing on the back half of protecting the game from cheating. But moving along with this, I'm not quite done with the video yet because I did provide a little more feedback over on the subreddit where they were asking for some feedback, and since I was able to write that down, I can address it here. First off, I do think the game does need some movement tweaks, some very slight movement tweaks. It is slower than Modern Warfare 2019, which is perfectly fine. I don't mind losing slide canceling, it's fine that it's not in the game. However, there is now no need to slide. You cannot hip fire while you're sliding, you can't really cancel your slide into any kind of real movement, so it's very limiting in that fact. And again, it's kind of fine. They didn't really need to nerf sliding as badly as they did here. I think you could go from sliding to going prone or sliding to jumping, but just make it so that the momentum does die down during the slide or after a slide. So really, the only thing that I would prefer if they don't want to allow sliding to cancel into anything else is at least let us hip fire while sliding. It's really the only thing that will have, the only benefit to sliding that there would be. Sliding around corners isn't really going to be a good idea in regards to getting out of a fight, because when you're sliding, your head is going to be down closer to where people are usually aiming, so you're giving people a free headshot. You're better off dolphin diving to get into cover and away from gunshots. And the other reason why I want to have sliding to have hip fire is because it allows us to go around corners to attack campers and sentinels that are playing in a power position. Normally right now, the only thing you can do is bunny hop around a corner and catch them off guard with that. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. It's very much a coin flip. However, if you're able to slide in and hip fire them out, it does add that other layer of guesswork that the sentinel and the camper would have to do. Now they have to kind of guess how you're going to go into that room. If they guess wrong and they aim high and you go low, then you beat them with the sliding hip fire. And if they look low while you go in high, then you can beat them with the traditional bunny hop. I do think that's something that should be put into the game because it's going to make it far more dynamic. It's going to force people to try and keep track of the playstyles that are going on in that game, in that lobby, and be able to adapt to each other that way. It shouldn't be that we need to use 100 gadgets to smoke out a camper or a sentinel. It shouldn't be that we have to go out of our way to avoid that certain spot because there's a camper there and there's nothing that we can really do to fight them. If they have a good spot, bunny hopping isn't always going to work, and there's going to be a lot less people that are willing to go into the same door over and over and over again to try and bunny hop on the same guy that's camping the same spot to kill them. I may be the moron that would do that, but not everyone else will. If we do have the option to slide in and hip fire someone who is camping, I think that would add a dynamic to the game that is very much missing right now. The other thing that I wanted to mention about movement is the two-step vaulting. Whenever you are vaulting over a high wall, you grab onto the ledge instead of vaulting over. The ledge thing is actually pretty cool, but it's also very situational. It's really only going to work for a game mode like Search and Destroy, or something where it's going to be more round based and you want to have some intel without putting yourself entirely over a wall. It's going to work great in Warzone, it's going to work great in Ground War, in Invasion, etc, etc. But in a more fast-paced game mode like Domination or Team Deathmatch, there's almost no real need for this two-step vault system. More times than not, this does slow down gameplay, which I know Infinity Ward wants to do, but it slows down gameplay in the game modes that are very fast-paced, and what happens is that if you're trying to do a flank, or you're trying to get around an enemy before they actually look in your direction, this two-step vaulting almost always will give up your position. It almost always will get you caught red-handed, and there's not a whole lot that you can do. I do think that they need to give us an option to speed up the two-step vaulting, whether we can just omit ourselves from ledge grabbing, so anytime we grab onto a ledge it just automatically vaults us over, or just have it be a separate keybind in order to grab onto the ledge and hold onto it, rather than doing the actual vault. There's a few different ways that can be changed so that it can be a little more automatic, but it does need to be more automatic, it does need to be quicker in the smaller 6v6 game modes. It's just causing a lot of deaths right now that are really have no reason to die because you wanted to get over a wall and your character decided, no, I'm not going to go over the wall, I'm just going to hang here for a second and contemplate my life choices before actually going over it. It's those little pauses here and there in regards to like gameplay that can really throw off the flow of the game, and two-step vaulting is one of those things when it comes to a 6v6 game mode. Just give us the option to bypass that, give us an option to speed vault, so we don't have to be there just hanging onto a wall for no reason. Alright, and lastly, the only other thing that I wanted to mention is the ADS times. I didn't really get to say this before in the previous video, so I'll get to address it here. But ADS times on assault rifles are relatively slow, and it makes it very difficult to use in a close range environment other than just having to rely on hip fire. The ADS times on SMGs are a lot quicker, of course they would be because they're a smaller weapon, and they're a lot more reliable even at ranges from up to 20 to 25 meters because you're able to aim down sight quicker. Add that to the low recoil that it has, you're going to be able to use this weapon to consistently get kills anywhere from point blank to 30 meters without much of an issue. Whereas over on the AR side, if you are trying to counterfight someone with an SMG from 20 meters, 25 meters, you're at a disadvantage anyways because your ADS time is just too slow, and you're going to be taking too much damage that by the time you actually get to ADS, you're dead. That's the way it kind of felt a lot of times than not, especially when it came to going around corners. So they do need to speed up ADS times, and more so to try and have an AR that can be a little more versatile than just being something that can hold down a lane from 30 meters and above. I said it before in the previous video, but if they don't make any changes to how the ADS times work on the ARs, the SMGs are going to be meta, and really the kind of loadout you're going to be seeing is going to be SMG marksman rifle, SMG sniper. You're not going to see a whole lot of people running an AR unless they absolutely love the AR class, or if there are ARs at launch that we didn't get to play with that have better ADS times or have better damage values and will be a lot more consistent even at a close range gunfight. But in regards to what we had, the M4 and the other weapon, the lock weapon, those were not quick enough, and even the SCAR. The SCAR, what made the SCAR great in the beta was a headshot multiplier, but that was about it. The ADS time was still relatively fine. I think the SCAR is going to be a very solid weapon, especially on launch. But when it comes to your more moderate weapons like the M4 and the other 5.56 profile weapons that are going to have less damage than the SCAR, or less headshot multiplier than the SCAR, it's going to be very difficult to close up on those close range fights. So that is it. That's all I have to say for now. So I hope you guys enjoy the beta, and I hope to see this game continue to improve and become better than what it was, better than what we had. And I do hope Infinity Ward does listen to a lot of this feedback and decides to make like some sort of playlist where certain things are in effect, whether it's an old mini-map, whether it's having different kind of movement values, but something that allows us to actually play the game the way we want to, and play the game in a slightly faster pace than what Infinity Ward has set for us right now. And at the same time, there's still a lot up in the air. We don't know what they're going to do with the perk system. We don't know what they're going to do with footsteps. We don't know what they're going to do with a lot of other things in the game. And that's why we're just sitting here waiting for a response. So until we see that, we kind of just have to sit here and hope that they actually know what they're doing. Maybe they do, and maybe they don't. I do have high hopes for the game. It's still going to be a solid game. It has far more polish than the previous games that we've had, but it is missing some of that fun value that we got from the previous games for those that actually enjoy the more fast-paced, frantic pacing that Call of Duty is more well known for. And I don't mind a slower Call of Duty, but this one is just a tad too slow on a few critical circumstances that make the game feel a little clunky and a little difficult to try and counter players that are playing slower, and I just think that needs to be tightened up just a little bit. So until then, I am Mr. Rain, and I will see you guys next time.